Hello, you found Why We Are Christians. My name is Kent Philpott. We are in the studios of Marin TV in San Rafael, California. We're talking to a gentleman I've known for a long time. He's up in Seattle, Washington. His name is Bob Davies. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you. My pleasure.
It's so good to see you. We got
You
a
too.
chance to reconnect at the 50th anniversary of Church of the Open Door in San Rafael. And we met at the Presbyterian Church on Wilson Avenue in Novato. And there we were.
Long time ago.
Long time ago. And so I have to say that I've always remembered you because you basically wrote my doctoral dissertation.
You're
a marriage
you're
manual
very
for
complimentary on that part.
a marriage
I
manual for
edited it.
former homosexuals, and we just published it a couple of years ago. But
Right.
so let's start kind of at the beginning, Bob. Where were you born? A little bit something about your family.
Okay. So I grew up in Vancouver, Canada, and until 10 years ago, I was Canadian, a resident alien. So I grew up in a Christian home, and so I've been attending church ever since I was infant, and Little Baptist Church in a suburb of Vancouver, Canada. And so I always have been grateful for that foundation in my life. I felt like it was, I was exposed to the gospel from a very early age, and so it really was a great foundation for my spiritual walk. I remember going to Sunday school every week, and then I'd go to services with my parents. At that time, my mom was Baptist, my dad was Church of England. So they actually went to two separate churches, which were a block apart. And
Okay.
I'd go with my mom to the Baptist church, and then my dad would drive a block up and go to his church and come back and pick us up later. So that has bearing on some of the issues we'll talk about later. So Kent, one thing that really impacted my life, of course, in a great way was when I was about 14. I remember that I was reading the Bible one night and felt really convicted. It's like all those Sunday school lessons kind of came into my mind, and I realized that I was a sinner and I needed a savior. And so I knelt down by my bed with nobody else around and made a commitment to Christ and welcomed him into my life. And so that was a life-changing experience for me. But I was a really shy kid and a good boy growing up. And so it's really curious to me now, but I never told anybody about that
Really?
commitment that I'd made for several years.
Okay.
And but still, I look back on that as the start of a deeper relationship with Christ that has continued to impact my life since then.
Okay. Were you baptized after that, or before that, or what?
I was baptized actually after that when I went to a Christian university and realized that I had never been baptized, and they gave an opportunity for students who wanted to be baptized to do so. And so I was
Really?
baptized at that time.
Wow, that's incredible. Did you play any sports, favorite hobbies, or anything in high school?
Music has always been a huge part of my life. I started piano lessons when I was 8. My older sister played the piano, and so she was kind of my inspiration. And so I took lessons for many years during my childhood. And I was not particularly athletic, but I did enjoy playing with the neighborhood kids. We'd be playing baseball and other sports. And so I was okay at sports, but it was not my forte.
Okay.
And that plays into some of the issues that we'll discuss
Okay.
as well today.
So after high school, what'd you do after high school, Bob?
During high school, I fell in love with biology. And so I went to the University of British Columbia in Vancouver and started studying zoology was my major. So I was a science student. But Kent, one of the struggles that I really had, by that time, I was really struggling with several different issues. And going back a little bit, when I was about 14, I realized that there was this attraction that I had to other men that I had no idea what it was. And then I read in a book about something called homosexuality, and I realized that that description fit the feelings that I was going through. And I was really horrified at that discovery. And I remember putting that book down and saying to myself, I'm never, ever going to tell anybody about this part of my life. And I'm going to start praying that God will take away these feelings. And so for the next number of years, all through high school and my first couple of years of college, I basically did not tell anybody about that part of my life. And that, I think, can really set up a deep struggle for some of us. I really struggled between my faith and these feelings that I was having, and I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know who to get help from. And so I just lived, I tended to push other people away. I didn't want people to get too close to me in case they discovered the real Bob Davies,
Oh, okay.
And so that really was the story of my life for the next 6 or 7 years. And it was not a happy time for me at all.
A time of struggle, self-examination, and uncertainty.
Yeah.
It's
Kent, the other struggle that I was having is that I was a science major, and I was exposed every day to evolution, and I didn't know how to reconcile that with my Christian faith. And again, I don't know why. I guess I was just a shy kid. I tried to figure this stuff out on my own, but I didn't really go to my pastor and talk about it or whatever. And so that was another huge conflict for me, and I didn't know how to resolve it.
Right. Okay. So you kept all the feelings inside, didn't talk to anybody about it?
Right. Yeah. And by then and I think this is fairly typical for kids that grow up in a Christian home, I was really struggling with my faith. Is it my faith or is it my parents' faith? Or, what do I really believe about Christianity and about who Jesus really is? And all of those kind of struggles were going on in my head in my late teens. And by then, I had actually dropped out of church for a few years there. It just seemed so irrelevant to these struggles that I was having, and I just didn't feel like I belonged there. So I dropped out of church, and then what happened was after my second year of college, I went to visit my sister, and she was living in northern British Columbia in a little town there about 600 miles north of Vancouver. And I went to visit her, and she invited me to stay for the summer because the job market in Vancouver was dismal that summer, and there was all kinds of work opportunities in the lumber town where she was. So I decided to stay for the summer. And she, being a piano player, she was playing the piano at her little church there, and she invited me to go along with her. And I didn't know anybody else in town except her. So I figured, well, I've got nothing to lose. I might as well tag along with my sister to church. And that church really embraced me. They loved me. They accepted me. And of course, I was a piano player. So they said, hey, Bob, can you help us play the piano for some of our services? Your sister is going, on vacation for a couple of weeks, and we don't have a piano player. So I was there in the evenings playing through the hymn book, trying to learn all these hymns so that I could play them on Sunday, and what basically happened, Kent, was I felt like my faith was renewed. It was reignited. I just felt, so loved and part of that church in a way that I had never experienced before. And that really was life-changing for me. And the other thing that happened that summer was that a music group from one of the Bible schools in Canada came through, and they played for the evening service. And after the service, these guys told me all about their school, and they had a fabulous music program there. This is Prairie Bible College near Calgary, Alberta. And they talked all about the school with great enthusiasm. And I just thought it sounded so interesting and so fabulous. And I was thinking that's something that I would be really interested in doing. But the whole idea that I was going to quit university and go off to this, college that my family had never heard of before was quite overwhelming for me. And I was really fearful about making that kind of decision. And one night I was praying about it, and I opened my Bible and I read these words from 2 Corinthians 12. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in your weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. And those were the only words that I saw on the page. They were red print, the words of Christ, And I felt there that God was really reassuring me that even though I felt maybe overwhelmed by this decision, that he was with me, and that this indeed was something that he had for me. And so I applied to the Christian college, got accepted, and told myself, well, I'll just go for 1 year and see how it works out. But I ended up graduating from there and studying music. I studied organ, I studied piano, I played for the men's quartet, I played for Daily Chapel. I just got really involved in music there. And that was just so delightful to me. I mean, I just had a blast.
Yeah.
To get my years there.
Sounds great, Bob. I mean,
yeah,
I almost wish I'd had that kind of an experience.
Yeah. It was really super. And the other thing, Kent, that really impacted me was that I was living in the men's dorm. And during those 3 years that I was at college, I developed really good quality friendships with other male students there in the dorm in a way that I never really had before. And that was a real healing time for me. And some of my struggles with my sexuality, they didn't go away totally, but they certainly receded into the background. And so those were 3 wonderful years of my life that I look back on with real thankfulness that God led me in that direction.
Okay. So after college, after you graduated, Bob, what happened then?
Okay. I felt like after college, I kind of floundered for a couple of years there.
Not uncommon. Not uncommon.
Yeah. What am I going to do with my life? You
Yeah.
know? And I moved back to Vancouver, was at home. I was working for several years, but I was really lonely, and some of my struggles started coming up more and more again. And so one night I went to the local Christian bookstore and discovered this little book by Kent Philpott called The Third Sex. And I got it and read it and learned about this ministry called Love in Action in San Rafael. And I felt like this is something that I really am interested in being part of. At that time, I had talked to a couple of people, including my pastor, about some of my struggles. And this was way back in the 1970s. And he really, was kind-hearted and everything, but really did not have any idea of what to tell me or how to help me. And I felt, Kent, like I really wanted to go to a ministry like this where people had experienced some of the same struggles and could give me some answers to these deep issues in my life that I felt were really pulling me away from my walk with Christ.
Right. And so, just a little background from me, real quick, Bob. We had started this ministry called Love in Action when 3 guys who I'd never known before made an appointment with me in the very same week. All of them said, I'm a Christian and I'm also homosexual. And I got them all together and we started this ministry called Love in Action. Within 2 weeks, 3 lesbian ladies joined us, and one of the lesbian ladies, she coined the name Love in Action out of 1 John. And so that's how that started, that Love in Action, which is a story I know you know well.
Yeah. Well, Kent, the other part that developed there that was so meaningful was your house ministries, where the church had these houses where people from the church could live together in community and grow in their faith together. And so when I read about this live-in program, I felt that that's something that I'm really interested in. So I applied for that and got accepted and moved down to California in the middle of 1979.
Oh, is that late? 1979, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
And that was a huge thing for me because up till then I had never talked to my family about some of my struggles. And so the idea that I was going to go to California needed some kind of major explanation with them. And so I had to sit down and tell my folks. But, they were very, very calm, very gracious. I don't think they really understood what I was trying to tell them that well, but they were accepting of it and thought, well, if you're going to get help, then that's great, and we'll support you all the way. So now, that Bob, was basically their reaction.
Bob, which Christian house was it?
I was part of a house, actually, that was connected with Love in Action. And there was several of the guys from the ministry that were in the house, and I'm not remembering the name of the house now. It's too many years ago.
Okay. Yeah, we had a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
And in and around Marin County, mostly in San Rafael.
Yeah. And so, Kent, the real gift for that was that I had accountability, and I had people that I could talk to at any time. And, of course, I, developed really good friendships with some of the guys, not only the guys in the ministry who were struggling with some of the things I was, but also the guys in the church that were not part of Love in Action. But they really embraced us. They accepted us. They loved on us. And that for me was just a major healing experience because I had never really, the Bible talks about walking in the light with each other. And I had spent a lot of my life hiding parts of myself from any other people in the church. And so for the first time, I could be open about the struggles I was having. In fact, the very first Sunday that I walked into church to the open door, one of the fellows from Love in Action got up and gave his testimony. And I think that's the first time that I'd ever heard that issue mentioned in church.
Yeah.
And, after he was finished, everybody clapped and cheered. And I just thought, this is amazing. I had never experienced something like that in my life.
One of the 3 that came to me that one time, and I think it was probably in 1972 or 73, was Frank Worthen. And long history in the gay life. I mean, he knew a lot of the big guys in San Francisco. They'd travel all over the world. It was pretty horrendous. And he and I started this together. The other 2 were involved. Neither one of them, all of them are gone now. So he was able to put that ministry together. I remember your offices in San Rafael, not far from where I'm sitting right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, about 2 blocks away from here is where your offices, Love in Action, was. And I started to move away from Love in Action at this point. I take a more minor role, but I would say there were dozens and dozens of people with a ex-gay background. In our congregation, there were several dozen plus people with a gay background, men and women, there at that. And my ministry was essentially counseling. I was the senior pastor, but
Right.
5 days a week I counseled. And one of the interesting things, Bob, that I think we want to talk about is that people came to us and said, we're having this struggle. Sometimes we want out of the gay life. Help us. We never did what you would call reparative therapy. We didn't do that. We didn't do that, and we just assisted those people who came to us and say, "Hey, I want to be a follower of Jesus, and I want out of the, and I'm struggling."
Yeah. Well, Kent, it was interesting. Before I even moved to San Rafael, I was praying about what my goals should be during my time in San Rafael. And I felt like God told me, my prayer basically was, God, make me into the man that you want me to be. And I didn't feel like my whole emphasis should be on this one issue, but God wanted to deal with all kinds of issues in my life. And he wanted to mature me. He wanted to disciple me. He wanted me to grow in my faith journey. And that was where I felt like the emphasis was, that I was there to grow. And as I said, there was such an openness in the church there. And the other thing, Kent, which I think was so wonderful, was that there was all kinds of people with all kinds of backgrounds. And so it wasn't like there was the normal people and then the ex-gay people. It was like, we were ex-druggies, we were ex-Jesus freaks or whatever. It was just a happy mixture of people who were all moving towards maturity in Christ. And so I felt just loved and accepted. We were all together in this journey. And so I felt that unity in a way that was very healing for me.
Exactly. And you became a big part of it. And I just want to mention this before again. I was in a doctoral program at San Francisco Theological Seminary, Presbyterian USA denomination. And by the way, it just celebrated its 150th anniversary here about a couple of months ago.
Wow.
And I had to write a dissertation, a doctoral dissertation, a big deal. And somehow you knew about this, and we talked about it, and you volunteered to help me. And we did. We came up with, it was called A Marriage Manual for Former Homosexuals.
Right.
And do you remember doing that?
Oh, yes. I remember it vividly because it was my first year in San Rafael. And I guess the Lord had his hand on this, but my car had a major mechanical problem around Christmas time, and I could not go home for Christmas. And so I was stuck in the office. Everybody else was gone. And I had this project from you. And so I could just spend all my time working on this manuscript. And that's basically what I did. So I vividly remember that because I really wanted to go home, but no, it wasn't in the cards for that day.
Well, we published that book now. It's been out a couple of years. I have to tell you this little story. When you, at a graduation, a doctoral program, they read off your dissertation. So they mention my name, and I'm coming across the stage, and they read off A Marriage Manual for Former Homosexuals, and the audience just erupted. Like, what? What are you talking about, man? What are you talking about?
Right. Oh, boy.
I'll never forget that. I'll never forget.
Yeah, I bet that was a shock.
It was a shock. Although it was to be expected. It didn't really bother me. I've always laughed about it all these years.
Yeah. Well, I'm just amazed that they allowed you to do that topic.
Well, my major professor, Lou Rambo, he strongly supported me. And he and I became a friend. We had to meet every day, for about 8 months. All the guys in the program had to meet with him for about half an hour. So
Right.
we got to be good, close friends. And
Yeah.
but he liked what I was doing, and supported me all the way, which was very
Yeah.
vital.
Yeah.
And that book is still being used. It's still it's still of value, Bob.
Yeah.
And
That's amazing. All these years later. Well, I was glad to be all part of that.
Yeah.
As I said, your writings have just had a huge impact on my life. And that's partly, Kent, why I wanted to do this interview today, just to acknowledge that and say thank you for your role in a major way, through your writing in my life, as well as thousands of other people. So that's something that, is a real treasure.
Well, thank the Lord for that. Thank you, Bob. And I'm just so happy that we're able to reconnect here at the reunion and be able to do this. And we're going to talk about a lot more stuff coming up. We want to move to some of the difficulties that we had with Love in Action, and the difficulties of my own personal failure and my going through a divorce that greatly impacted Love in Action.
Yeah.
And it's something that we can't go back and undo, but we can only acknowledge and understand that I understand that my own personal failures impacted a lot of people I know. And I think it's one of the reasons why I wanted to get the manual published and continue to reach out, particularly in our own day, with people that have homosexual issues.
Right.
Because I don't think there is very much anymore today.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's super. And then I also want to talk to you in the next program about how I ended up getting married.
Yes.
And my wife and I just celebrated our 37th anniversary this week. So that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that, Bob, too.
Okay.
And so I just can't tell you how happy I am that we're able to get this done, because I have always had a love for gay people. I always have. I never got involved in it myself. My sin was the opposite area.
Yeah. Right.
But to be able to reach out, particularly in our day, to people who are struggling with the same-sex attraction. All right, Bob, we're gonna close out this program, and so everyone, I'll be looking for the next program with Bob Davies. So long.